Joining me now is Harold Hillman, who is an executive coach. G'day, Harold.
Good afternoon, Roman.
You know what? Flexibility in the workplace. I tell you now, a lot of workplaces, as you know, they talk about a work-life balance, but do they really practice it?
There has been a significant uptick over I would say, the last 5 years or so. I read an impressive study produced by Flex Careers. They are an organization that works with companies around flexible working arrangements. And they conducted a workplace flexibility study in 2019 with 1,600 people, which included HR professionals, because they would be the ones sort of drafting and implementing the policies, but employees and even job seekers. And the reality now is that workplace flexibility is the number one determinant as to whether or not a person will accept a job. And so, yeah.
I can imagine that, because you know what? And I do think of mothers, because it's not a sexist comment. Most mothers do the predominant work when it comes to bringing up children, right?
That's right.
And for some women, if they cannot leave work at 10 to 3 or 2:30 to get their children from school into after-school care, they could not do the job.
That's right.
And more employers are showing that reasonable attitude towards that situation, are they?
Look, the study showed that 50% of women who were across that representative group would not be able to work, would not be able to earn their salary if they didn't have that flexibility. That's compared to 16% of men. So it is still a significant driver for women, and particularly if we want to enhance gender representation and get a more balance between, male and female employees, we do have to show greater flexibility. But the reality is that men now are expecting, it is an expectation, whereas a decade or so ago it was considered a perk.
Yeah. Well, years and years ago, Harold, you may have been in New Zealand at the time, they had glide time.
Glide time.
So you did your 8 hours, but you could do it any time. So, but as long as you did 8 hours, that was government departments.
Yeah.
So, what is workplace flexibility? In essence, what does that mean?
Well, they're different. It really is the workplace, the management making room and space for a person to be able to live and work to their fullest potential. And some people, some people work better, particularly if they have jobs that require deep analysis, deep thought, where they may have to do a lot of writing and those types of things. An example would be a person who believes that they can concentrate more effectively when they are at home. There was a group that did a study called Atlassian on open space environments in workplaces, because a lot of and the average employee is interrupted 56 times on average at work each day.
Really?
3 minutes is the average attention span on a task before the next interruption. And they estimate that you can spend up to 2 hours each day trying to refocus after all those interruptions.
Yeah.
And so the bottom line is, that mentality that you have to be in the office physically and sitting with the team in order to do your work, that's becoming a old-fashioned sort of a paradigm now.
There are studies also that show that people are more productive if they're allowed to work from home. And you'd think, no, you're going to be doing the washing and mowing the lawns. You might do that, but you're not sitting in traffic and you're not being distracted, right?
You're not being distracted. It actually is less expensive in terms of cost for employees if they are allowed to work from home a couple of days a week. As I mentioned before, actually the research suggests just the opposite, and that is, for people who are working at home, they tend to invest more. They tend to give a bit more because they're out of concern that people might perceive that they're sort of taking advantage of the policy. So you actually get higher quality work and productivity.
Yeah, I know that I'm far more productive in my real job if I'm allowed to be at home, because, look, sure, I might stick a casserole in the slow cooker, but I am sitting there doing the work on the laptop for hours at a time without those ongoing distractions. How fair is this flexibility term for those people who do need to be at work from 9 to 5, though?
Yeah, there are some roles where, particularly customer-facing roles in retail, for example, where an outlet is open for a certain number of hours a day. And the bottom line is that you need human beings in the workplace to interact with customers. But even there could be greater flexibility in terms of, I like this concept of glide time, but, in terms of job sharing. For example, where two people may want to work part-time and they can work off of each other and essentially operate as a team, which is even though they have to be there, they can flex around things because people have broader lives. Some people are working on degrees. Some people are doing custodial care for ailing relatives or child care considerations. And so even if you are in a workplace where you have to be there physically because of interface with employees, there's still a lot of flexibility in terms of how you do that.
Some employers, and I'm not suggesting for a moment they're always stale, pale males, but people who are set in their ways and think that because you're physically in the building, you're doing your job.
That's right.
For an employee who's listening now who wants to approach that kind of person, how should they have that discussion with their boss?
You go in with a good case. I'm not sure if most people are aware, but it's actually employee relations law in New Zealand in 2000, the year 2000, which granted every employee who works in a business the right to request flexible working arrangements. And so you should really think it through in terms of like if you were building a business case, and the idea being that you have already proactively considered how things might be differently if you are working from home or working on a reduced hour schedule or trying to compress your time across Monday to Thursday in order to have Friday off, and be able to demonstrate that there's going to be no impact because you have no negative impact because you've already, really thought through all the factors. So go in with a good case, go in knowing that you have the right in New Zealand to be able to request flexible working arrangements, and your employer has to respond with an answer within 1 month.
Okay, let's pretend you're talking to an employer now who's listening.
Yeah.
What's the benefit for an employer to allow their staff to come and go at will?
Look, happy employees, engaged employees, directly drive customer satisfaction and customer retention, and so this is a big issue. Workplace flexibility is a big issue now around what we call the employer brand, and that employers want to really be mindful that people are going to leave if they don't have that flexibility. So this, as you said, that 9 to 5 paradigm where you physically have to be in the office is one that is in 10 years' time, it's going to be antiquated. And you're going to find that teams are working differently, more virtually, more telecommunications, a lot of those types of things. Technologies that are already in place and are now kicking in and actually are great enablers around the workplace flexibility.
And that whole thing about having to be in someone's face for a meeting, there's all sorts of WebEx, for example. You don't have to be in the same room to have meetings, do you?
You don't have to be in the same room to have meetings. It is important every now and then for people who are in a team to actually physically see each other. But the reality is, we've got to keep up with the frantic pace of change, and allowing that flexibility actually enables you to do that. So physically sitting together just for the sake of all being in the same building at the same time, like I said, in a decade or so, that's going to be an antiquated model.
Yeah. If you don't like change, you're in the wrong life, aren't you?
That's right, Roman. That's right.
Harold Hillman from the Sigmoid Curve Group. How do people get in touch with you?
I'm at www.sigmoidcurve.com.
Beautiful. Always good to catch up with you, Harold. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Roman.